family is so keen on electrification, it's no wonder they're so curious about hybrids.
The Toyota RAV4 has had the compact hybrid SUV segment pretty much to itself since it launched in 2018, but now the Hyundai Tucson is here to shake things up. Shall we take them for a drive and see how they size up?
Let's go.
So Renita, I think this might be the first all-female comparison test at Driving.ca, which is kind of a cool thing.
It is really exciting. I'm so glad to be a part of it. What are you driving?
This is the 2022 Hyundai Tucson Hybrid, the ultimate trim, and other than the Ford Escape that came out a couple years ago, this is really the only serious competition the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid has had. So it's exciting to see some variety come into the space.
I am driving the 2021 Toyota RAV4 XSE Hybrid model. It's actually really great.
Let's talk about the exterior styling first. What do you think of the design of each of these cars?
I really love the styling of the Tucson. I think Hyundai tried to do something different and creative, and I think it really worked. The RAV4 to me looks a little more simple, more like a classic SUV type of shape and curves. What do you think?
Our tastes landed a little bit different there, but that's not that surprising. If nothing else, the Tucson styling is meant to be a little bit probably divisive and attention-getting. There's a lot going on this car for me. I find it a little bit just too outside the box for my styling taste, but I appreciate what they're trying to do to make things look a little different and shake things up. But for me, I prefer the exterior styling on the RAV4. I find it very handsome, very classic. Not a lot of people necessarily want a car that sticks out when they're buying a compact SUV, so I think that that probably hits the marks for a lot of people. But on the other hand, the interior on the RAV4 I find to be rather bland, rather monotone. I think that you weren't a fan of the blue stitching on the hybrid interiors.
I'm not a fan of the blue stitching on the RAV4. I'm not sure what it is, but I know you said it's got something to do with the hybrid versions having blue on it, but I wish it were more like black on black or something a little bit lighter. It's a very heavy blue. Also, the seats get covered by car seats for this car if I was driving it, so.
To me, the interior on the Tucson is gorgeous. I love the layering of the materials and the color. The fabric inlays here are really, really nice, high quality, lots of visual interest, and it has that huge panoramic sunroof that lets in lots of natural light, which in Canada the RAV4 Hybrid doesn't have, so that's an advantage for the Tucson.
When I first got into the RAV4, I thought it was an extremely smooth drive, and I thought it was going to come out on top for sure. Then I got in the Tucson and found it a lot smoother than the RAV4. The problem is driving the Tucson, there's a lot of things about it in this top trim that are a little bit better than the RAV4. But the RAV4, once I drove it again and sat in it for a couple days, it makes up for it. Like, you get really used to driving the RAV4 after a couple days.
I agree with you. The RAV4 is stable, steady. This RAV4 drives a little bit more like what the Tucson does than other RAV4s would that have the sort of more relaxed suspension. The XSE has a sport tune suspension on the front that makes it a little bit more planted, a little bit more stuck to the road than other RAV4s are. In the Tucson, you get a lot of that same feeling. It's a little bit more, I hesitate to say sporty in an SUV, but it's a little bit more energetic, a little bit more planted, not a lot of body roll at all, nice and stable and very smooth. And coming back to the powertrain in this Tucson, I have to say, like, that the 1.6 liter turbo in combination with the electric motors is just chef's kiss. It's so good because there's a whole lot going on in the low end of the revs, whereas the RAV4 does take a little bit more to get going. It's nice once it's going, but it does feel like it lags a little bit more than the Tucson does on the road in city driving. We are driving two slightly different trim levels here. With the Tucson, we're driving the Ultimate, which is the top trim, and the XSE that you're in the RAV4 is just a tick below base, and yet the pricing on the Ultimate, the Tucson Ultimate, is a little bit lower. We're in the $43,000 range with this, whereas with the RAV4 XSE, it's a tick over $44,000. $1,000. So although you're driving one trim level below the top, our pricing is pretty much equivalent, and that becomes important when we start to talk about other things like features.
Yeah, it is important, especially if you're going to pay that price. I mean, if you can get all of those features for a little bit less, then you might as well stick with the Tucson. However, I do think that if you are budget conscious, that you could even go down a trim and save a bit of money on the RAV4.
Both of these SUVs are pretty close to equivalent in terms of the safety features that they have equipped. You have the things like blind spot monitoring, forward collision warning, adaptive cruise control, automatic high beams, but there are a couple things in the Tucson that are unique offerings in the segment. One of them is that blind spot monitor system that shows you the camera view of the blind spot on each side when the turn signal is activated.
I love that you can see it there, and it's so clear. It's such a great view to have there. I will say this, even though we're so used to all these crazy new features like blind spot monitoring, the RAV4, if for some reason those don't work, I find it a little bit hard to look to the side to like get your blind spot view. There's a huge gap where the two doors meet. That's just sort of covered up there. When it comes to the features in this car for the price of both of them, I mean, obviously you're getting a little bit more with the top trim on the Ultimate Tucson. In the RAV4, you do have a touchscreen option here. I find it a little bit difficult to use. It's not as intuitive as the Tucson, but that being said, there are a few things missing on the Tucson, such as a volume knob and tuning knob for the radio, which I missed greatly.
I also really am not a fan of the new Hyundai and Kia infotainment system. I find that some of the screens are not well thought out in how they're laid out. The radio screen, for example, has these huge, granted very cool looking graphics that show things like the number of the radio station, but they take up so much space on the screen, and then the parts that you actually need to use, like the touch buttons at the bottom, are tiny and harder to press while you're driving. I think that Hyundai missed the mark on this one, and I'm sure that it's something that'll be fixed down the line, but there are certain things that you're choosing to live with if you choose this vehicle in this model year. So I'm not very keen on the exterior styling on the Hyundai Tucson, and that lack of volume knob is almost unforgivable, but it also drives very well. I don't have to look at it when I'm inside. The feature content for the price is incredible. Plus, there's not a 6-month wait. I think if it's up to me, I'm probably taking the Tucson.
I agree, Stephanie. The Tucson is the winner of these two, though it was a very close comparison. The entry-level RAV4 is also a great choice for budget-conscious families, but at the end of the day, it was the Tucson for me. For Driving.ca, I'm Renita Narain.
And I'm Stephanie Wallcraft. For more SUV comparison tests, click the bell to subscribe or follow us on social media.